Good evening, good evening, good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do the usual disclaimers and a little bit of a brief rant for something that I had already seen at least 3 to 4 months ago to be coming. So, what am I talking about? I've known about the H5N1. In fact, I knew exactly when it mutated to where it can now spread to humans for quite some time. I also know, scarily enough, that when we're talking about survivability of this new event, it's not like COVID, folks, not what we originally got. Okay? You remember when you said those of us who are disabled, that are immune compromised, that it only just kills us? Yeah. And they say us autistics are the ones who don't know how to communicate appropriately. Yeah, about that, right? And of course, as I figured was going to happen, we have a bunch of idiots all over the internet with their do not comply nonsense. One of my favorites is an individual who went and did a search in regards to avian flu, saying the last person in the United States to die was in 2022, and it just went to that person. Let me explain a few things to you as a person whose parents have been working in healthcare longer than a lot of these folks have been alive. When you're looking at a new pandemic getting ready to come through, the idea is not to sit on your ass and wait around until it strikes you. If you do that, you're already dead. Especially considering this new strain coming only has a 50% survival rate. Compare that with the last pandemic. Okay? It was sitting about around 3%, and we saw thousands of people die. And before you call it a pandemic or a hoax, let me tell you again. The reports I got from my brother and my mom, who work in actual hospitals, regards to beds overflowing to such a point that they had to turn away some folks, put them up in helicopters, and try to find, under very strange circumstances, a bed somewhere for them to be able to go and be able to be properly quarantined. Okay? Yeah. See, in California, what Gavin's trying to do is get the safety parameters up now, before the threat becomes too widespread. It's this idea in healthcare that you specifically watch out for these things and try to get as many things in place as humanly possible before we end up in a super spreader event. It is a very stupid comment to say, well, it was only one death and it was in 2022. The idea of what they're doing is they're trying to get things in place now before it does become a super spreader event. In particular, and what has been most concerning, and what people like me have been warning you all about most of all, the kill rate for H5N1 is far, far more dangerous than the original strain of COVID ever was. This current strain has been gone through lightning speed mutations. It's just now getting into humans. Because, yeah, it had to mutate before it could get to us. But the idea is not to sit there like a spoiled 3-year-old, stamping your foot, screaming at other people to not comply, put no safety standards in place, do nothing to protect your face or the people around you. Guess what? If you do things that way, if you sit there and you deny reality, if you keep going about things as normal, you know what generally tends to happen? Especially when we are literally on the brink of Christmas here. You're talking international and national flights. Our airports are about to be overloaded from people going all over the world to celebrate the holidays. If there are no safety protocols in place, I hope to God you hear what I'm saying to you. The idea is not to stamp your foot. Your idea is not to ignore vital health information because you don't want to comply with the government. Okay? Protocols like this are put into place before a super spreader event can happen to keep your asses safe. If you want to go out there and die, fine. That is your choice. But we are trying to have a situation where your stupid decisions does not cause innocent people to end up in a body bag because you want to insist that COVID and this new strain of avian flu was a pandemic. It's fake. It's a hoax. When I can literally tell you, for example, waiting for my brother to get off work so that we would be able to get me a ride home, sitting there in the ER waiting room, watching these people being ran front to back. Hospital staff that might not even get to see their homes for a week because they are on call and there's just simply not enough staff to be able to handle everyone. You think the original COVID strain was bad? You haven't seen shit yet. I would cancel you to not be a moron. I would cancel you that even if you do think it's a hoax, at least understand that every winter is generally super spreader events for things like flus and colds. And we have immunocompromised disabled people and elderly who would like to be able to continue to live for as long as we possibly can. Quit with the nonsense. What could be on the horizon is going to be unlike anything any of you have ever seen before. And stamping your foot saying that it's Fauci for God's sake. Or that this is a plan, it's our government. Far be it from me to tell you that the government's not shady. Considering how long I've been fighting the JRC and the back deals that I know have been made to protect this tiny little school from even a shred of federal investigation. Okay? But you all are letting your own prejudice and your own hate cloud your judgment. Usually, if you want to have poor judgment, and get yourself killed, fine, that's on you. But in situations like this, it's not you alone that will be paying the price for your own stupidity. All in an effort to own the libs of all things. I'm going to continue to trust people like my brother, my mom, these folks who worked in healthcare that worked back-to-back shifts throughout the entirety of 2020. And I'm going to comply with whatever they suggest instead of some frothing at the mouth, extreme far right people who are insisting that it's a hoax. And you know what? If it is a hoax, I'm not going to feel bad about following protocols because I actually care about my fellow human beings, even some of the more unsavory, ableistic ones. And at least that meant with the information that I had at hand, I did my best so that I would not be a risk to others. Don't be an idiot. Don't let your hate and anger blind you to what could be one of the worst pandemic swings that we have seen since the 1910s. All right, now to the disclaimers. I'm sorry, but my God, people. All right. If you are unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the campaign against the troubled teen industry, you're going to see all the pertinent links right there in the description box. Please, in particular, take note of the article written by Neuroclastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics. In it, they interviewed over 800 ABA professionals in regards to the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center's so-called behavior modification program. The Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read that article so much, they threatened Neuroclastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Neuroclastic refused, so you know the drill, folks. Please read the article, share on all your social media. Also included is Neuroclastic's public statement regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, just in case the JRC ever actually does see through with their threat. Trigger warning 1. When we discuss places like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips or surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please make sure to utilize the headphones. Trigger warning 2. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We use profanity on occasion and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they're watching this, very obviously, parental supervision is very much advised. Trigger warning 3. There is a particular auditory issue that I have that was brought to my attention earlier this evening that a lot of times, without me realizing it, because I can't hear it myself, I become very loud. I am sure, especially considering the subject at hand, that has happened very often while doing these videos. So I would like to first extend to all of you my apologies on that. It's not really something I can control, in particular because I don't even realize that I'm doing it. And trigger warning 4. The JRC is doing right now is the same thing that they always do. Not answering a single challenge put to them by the FDA, the advocates, or their fellow service providers, both community-based and residential, and plowing right through to the same comments that they always do beforehand, of course, taking a hand-picked example and painting it as bleak as humanly possible. They do so because they want you to have a certain impression about this particular individual that they are speaking about, so that you can just trust them and their judgment that nothing's going to work but, physical adversives and torture. It's been their playbook from the very beginning. So, when we go through these, we're going to continue with the LE. As usual, I'm going to be busting apart the narrative that they're trying to sell you, and as best I can explain to you how it really is. Alright, so, where we left off last time. Ellie's parents next had her evaluated by a pediatric neurologist who recommended continuing early intervention with LE and have LE seen by a behaviorist or child psychologist. Here we fucking go. Alright, I gotta ask, Massachusetts, do you have a complete different sort of process when kids come into the service system than everyone else? Do you? Because every other state, not just mine, but every other state, it goes diagnosis, evaluation, full functional behavioral assessment, and then, and only after then, do the conversations begin in regards to the treatment programs to best address what those issues are. It seems, while reading this, that Massachusetts is completely different. See, what we're seeing here is there is a huge glaring step that is nowhere to be seen in this narrative. And what's missing here that should be there is right after diagnosis, those parents should have been set up to get a proper, full functional behavioral assessment done. Those are literally the steps. Literally the steps. And I've explained over and over and over again as to why. Because you gotta have a foundation. Otherwise, you're flinging a kid from program into program into program, and you don't even know what's wrong because there was no foundation to build a treatment program off of. The house built on sand with no foundation, if you know what I mean, right? You see this here, right? They should have had them. Very next thing, set up, referred to a place so that the full functional behavioral assessment was done. Next. Literally next. Yes, that early. Right there. Instead, what these individuals did was they did the evaluation, and then the doctors were forcing early intervention. Behavioralists, we're going to go straight into ABA. You're sending them straight into ABA with no foundation, not just for the kids and the parents themselves, but a foundation to devil's advocate here. We all know I hate ABA and I have my reasons, we all do, but let's just play devil's advocate here and just medical model perspective, okay? You are throwing a kid into a program not knowing what's triggering those behaviors. You're putting them in that program, not giving their staff any kind of foundation to go off of. They have no information, no context, no nothing. Then the people like the JRC are like shocked when something like that fails. It's because you're skipping a very vital step. Not every single program is the same. They all have different strengths and weak points. All right? That's why the full functional behavioral assessment is one of the most, if not the most, important thing after diagnosis to be done. Because you cannot come up with a proper treatment program or plan without it. You're wearing a blindfold and trying to pin the tail on the donkey, and somehow it ends up in his eye socket. Okay? Yeah. So, in actuality, here it looks like this argument is not doing what they want it to do. And the reason is the person who's going over this with you not only has been through the service system, but also worked within it and helped build it up and modernize it in my part of my state. So I can tell you the elephant in the room for those who aren't quite as familiar with this world. It's glaringly obvious why this fails. You can't build a treatment program and expect it to work when you don't even have a real understanding of what's triggering those behaviors in the first place. Parents are not psychic. Direct care staff are not psychic. Caseworkers and social workers are not psychic. Advocacy specialists and resource specialists also were not psychic. We need that foundation because that is the information that is absolutely pivotal to be able to get those kids in the programs that are going to best address their very specific needs. If you don't have it, it doesn't matter how well liked, rated, or high on the totem pole a particular program is. If there's no foundation, there's no success. Okay? Yeah. But we pushed early intervention again. Let me say it again. You are pushing down a particular path before the most crucial part at the beginning of entering into the service system is being completely annihilated and left to the side. If y'all do not learn anything else from me in regards to this channel, I hope the one thing you do will be able to internalize is how absolutely crucial that full functional behavioral assessment is. I cannot overstate how important it is. Other than when the kid doesn't have it, that's when you get into situations like this. All right, let me finish the little paragraph here. We'll try to keep it short tonight. I know, famous last words. After that recommendation, in or about 1994, Ellie's parents hired Dr. Richard Bromfield, a child psychologist who worked with Ellie on a weekly or bi-weekly basis until about 1998. JRC, why in the entirety of that paragraph am I not seeing anywhere where those parents would have been guided to get that full functional behavioral assessment done? Why are we just throwing the kid headlong into a clinic, into a program with no foundation? No program or plan will work if there's no foundation, because what that program may be known for to help with best might not be the type of help that particular autistic kid needs. And yeah, you keep doing that, the kid's going to get more frustrated and more frustrated and more frustrated. And by the way, contrary to popular belief, we do understand, in fact, we are hyper aware of how everyone interacts around us. We see your all's frustration, your anger with us and at the world. We're not blind, okay? We can see that. That's why the steps are what they are. That assessment provides a foundation, a pathway. It helps in the development of a direction that we need to get started from first, before we get into any type of early intervention or community-based or residential-based programs. Again, I will state, it does not surprise me in the least, that these kids have been booted out of so many schools. Because none of those kids did have that foundation to be built on. Okay? You can't just get a diagnosis, throw the kid into a day program, say a Hail Mary, and expect it to work. Trust me. I had to walk parents who, a lot like some of these parents at the JRC, the kind of we go back through the service system so that the assessment they should have got as the very next step would get done. And then I, the caseworker, the social worker, whoever that was a part of that person's particular circle of support, would work together with the consumer in finding the plan and treatment program that looks like it's best going to address the areas that need it the most. You can't do that without a proper foundation. You can't just throw them from program and program and then get mad at yourself or get mad at your kid or just say nothing's going to work when there's no foundation there. And I do stare directly at the JRC, but not just them, but the school districts and the school systems. The school systems that are public schools. This whole thing, the only part that is their specific responsibility is, hey, I think your kid might have this. This is a clinic. They specialize in PLA. I'll just use PLA. I think you should go ahead and have them assessed. That should be literally the beginning and the end for the public school systems. These parents, whether they need to have another parent mentor to help them through the program to make sure all the proper steps are taken where they need to be taken, there's a huge gaping hole there. Most parents may not work in the healthcare system like my mom did. Okay? And even with her knowledge, it was my aunt who understood that after diagnosis, what I needed was to get that full functional behavioral assessment. In particular, because I was so lately diagnosed. Previously, I had been misdiagnosed and was fed Ritalin. And now I have knees that spasm constantly, but that's a completely different subject. The point is, you can't throw someone into a program without any kind of foundation. You can't send a kid to a random school without knowing what that specific school specializes in so that you can know and understand whether that is going to help address the needs of your child or not. Whatever is going on in Massachusetts, where they are just directly, before even doing that assessment, are automatically throwing them into early intervention, just be glad I don't live in Massachusetts. Because I would read you all the riot act with a bullhorn 1 inch from your eardrum repeatedly. Okay? I'm going to paraphrase the last part here. The biweekly in regards to the child psychologist. And this makes no coherent sense to me, and let me tell you why. The way the system is out here is it's more of a team, right? And I see all of them once a month on different days. My neurologist, my psychiatrist, and my psychologist. Okay? Yeah. Used to be also a child pediatrician specialist in there as well. Yeah, that's not really something I need so much these days. Because I'm old. But yeah, I did have that team. But I wasn't seeing them twice a week. Now, outside of those doctors, my team, those who I interacted with, and depending on what program you're in, they have different names. But to simplify it, the people I was seeing once or twice a week is called direct care staff. Now, in regards to what direct care staff looks like for someone like me, as opposed to what we're more used to for the more physical disabilities, well, they have a different name out here that might clear that up for you a little bit. It's called CA. That would mean, oh no, CI. Oh my God. CI, which meant community integrators. to kind of help in regards to some of the social issues was part of their job description. Teaching life skills. I was coming into the service program right at transition age. So we were covering that, the cooking, the managing a checkbook, managing finances, being able to cook healthy food, clean, all of it. And it started middle of junior year and went to my senior year. I had a CI after that, but as I hit more and more milestones, what I needed them for shifted until I was able to get to a baseline point where I no longer needed direct care staff, or my case, the community integrator, the CI. However, talk about getting a rude awakening about how the rest of my team needs to be always there, because if not, you don't want to know the level of squirrely it gets. Yeah. But you see where I'm going with for that, right? That's how the service program and the service system is out here. It's the same sort of service system that I have seen out in Kansas, Arkansas, Indiana, Oklahoma. If you can't tell through different conferences and all of that, yeah, I've gotten feedback. At least to everyone I've talked to, that's how it's worked. The doctors were more of your treatment staff, right? They take care of your medicines, take care of your therapy. Now, there are programs that I didn't necessarily need, such as OT, PT, and all of that. That is also available as well. One of my friends, Renee, who's kind of looks a little bit more, we'll call it classic version of autism. She had those. She had more constant direct care staff there for her. A little bit more accommodations and assistance with helping her keep everything going. But essentially, by and large, that is a pretty decent template as to how the service system tends to work. So, anybody from Massachusetts wish to explain to me, like I'm an angry toddler, why we have a licensed doctor in the position of someone that is usually a direct care staff or a CI? Because that seems a little bit weird. You know? Even with ABA and those professional things, you still have the specific direct care staff that interact with you. You don't have a fully licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, and neurologist doing the same activities that a direct care staff or CI would do with you. Okay? It also makes me feel even worse. If you have these doctors here, this is their specialty. They are considered experts. And none of these people thought to question, where's the full functional behavioral assessment? Yeah. People want to know why I'm nihilist. Exhibit A. All right, now I know we're going to have some more gaslighting. And there's the DSM-4. Oh, goodness, here we go. But the DSM-4 childhood diagnosis cannot be considered for LE, and I have run into schools like this. And I've had to tell gently the parents, like, you know that you have the right to seek a second, third, and hell when it calls for a fourth opinion, right? Right? If you see something's going on, and what the doctor's telling you, it doesn't feel right, you do have the right to go seek the opinion of another expert in the field. Now, when that person was being diagnosed was about around the same time where I got diagnosed incorrectly. You notice some of these are popping up here. Those drugs look familiar. There's a reason for that. Those are the drugs that are prescribed for folks with ADD or ADHD. Now, ADD is no longer a part of the DSM. It's definitely not in the DSM-5. That was my original diagnosis, started about second grade. And they had me on ever horribly increasing amounts of Ritalin. And then towards the end of high school, put me on ever increasing amounts of Adderall. It was those last 2 years of school when I lived with my aunt that we understood that my diagnosis was not correct. And we began to take the steps to get me into the service system, the assessments done, so we could come up with a treatment program that was going to address what I was going through at the time. Right? Basically, to give you a small clip note history, between the years of 1991 and 1994, ADD and ADHD were two of the highest diagnoses in regards to developmental disabilities of that time period. Now, I might get in trouble with some of those within the neurodivergent community for saying this, because I know that's not been their experience, but let me counter by saying I lived it. That's how I know. I lived it. And not just me. Fellow classmates were getting prescribed Ritalin. My stepbrother was putting on Ritalin. It was pretty much a very solid thing at the time. Oh, your kid's annoying you? Feed them an methamphetamine. That'll help. Weirdly enough, the Ritalin and the Adderall did work for me for a long time. Until it didn't. You know? But yeah. Sorry to go on a little bit of a rant here, but just kind of looking at how that poor kid was put through the Massachusetts service system. My God, just reading those 2 paragraphs gives me infinitely more questions than I have found answers. This is extremely backwards. It is no wonder those poor parents have been taking those poor kids in that state to school after school after school. This looks like an uncoordinated absolute mess. I won't take it back, folks. I'm sorry. I just call it as I see it. It may be better now. I don't know. I've been around here at least for the majority of my life. But there's some kind of real glaring issues here in regards to how what happens after diagnosis is done in Massachusetts. I got a lot of questions and uneasy feelings going on after reading those 2 paragraphs. And we're going to go ahead and close on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do tend to get removed from time to time, so please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to hit the comments. I appreciate your time this evening. As always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. I'll see you all tomorrow night. Bye-bye, everyone.